Stonehouse Series by Mike and Dianne Heintzemans. Prologue. Bitterness filled his mouth. Alkali dust and chalky white, it had entered with his breath and turned to mud. Specks of sand driven by the wind, they stung him in the face, collecting in the corners of his eyes. Settling in his hair, smaller grains slid through drops of sweat and down his neck. There was no garden growing here. 27 miles of travel had brought him to this place, only now to wonder what it was that would be found. Soon he would know, and soon everyone would know. Had the jaws of death closed down upon his friend and swallowed? Or would the man begin to breathe once more and die again another day? If a seed is pushed beneath the dirt, shall it come to life? Buried in the ground, who can tell? Summoned by the sisters, he had sent help on ahead, although in this savage place there was no sign his help had made it through. He pushed on through a windbreak tree line, thick, bushy, and short. It was a stand of junipers, their branches jumping in the wind. 50 feet in, he felt some relief and pulled a soggy scarf away from his lips. Bits of sand swam between his canines and settled on his molars, grinding between his teeth when he bit slightly down. He raised a leather water skin to his mouth, flushing his teeth with the warm liquid. He swished the tepid stuff around and spat it out. What is it they have done? Was there nothing grown from what was given? He looked back to rehearse the way he came. Sand dunes like snow drifts made their way among the trees. He moved further in and found a new and hopeful place. The ground beneath his feet dropped sharply down, and he followed a donkey trail which led him through a valley. Who can explain the secrets of a seed or tell the way it grows? But one can plant it in the ground or throw it to the crows. He continued on, searching. Tucked into a cove on the valley's north side were signs of life. A round pointy-topped tent home near the hillside cliff, and a fence around a good patch of ground, a garden with growing corn inside. And this one, what else has this one planted? This is more than an existence. These are signs of life, of hope. Batting at his hair, it felt like old swish grass, stiff and brown with summer's end. Scratching at his scalp, his fingernails filled with sand, and he pushed against the unruly stuff, trying to flatten it down. I should have worn a hat. Chapter 1. 2 small but strong hands worked a polished rome, spear, point, plunge, push, twist, stab, stab, stab. As large as her hand and shining in the morning sun, it found another mark. Plunge, twist, plunge, push. Although the tool of war had lost its razor edge, today it fully served the purpose of its new owner and the war which she now raged. Lunge, stab, stab, twist, and a right hand darted forward, ripping out both stem and root of her intended target. Wedged beneath fallen timbers near an ancient battle site the blade had laid for years before the young woman found it. Protected from the ravishes of time, the spear's broken hardwood handle, she recut and rounded over, just short of its splintered break. Holding the blade short shaft tightly in her right hand, her body close to the ground, she pressed both sets of knuckles into the broken dirt. With strong arms she pulled her body forward. Drawing to a kneeling position, her legs tucked under, and with her bare feet dragging along behind, she set upon her task again. Twisting slightly right, stab, stab, twist. Rip it out by the roots, twist to the left, stab, stab, twist, and rip it out, stem, roots, and all. Across the way, her sister's voice called out while splashing in a water bucket. washing off some dirt. "I'm heading in, Mary. It's almost time for lunch." "Okay, Martha. Just got a few more weeds to pull in this row. Is there any honey butter left from what you made?" Plunge, plunge, push, rip, plunge, twist, rip, stab, stab. No, your brother ate it all." Lunge, twist, rip, stab, twist. She looked back over her left shoulder. "Laz, how could you?" "Really, it was very easy, and I would do it all again if there was more biscuits and honey butter." Mary gathered up her pesky weeds and stood to her feet while whacking dirt clumps off their roots. Collecting 4 more piles, she threw them in a compost pit and left them there to rot. Martha had placed her right foot on the first stone step outside their home's western door before Mary called out to her sister, "Martha, what's for lunch?" "Hard-boiled eggs and cornbread." Laz wondered after her, although Martha could not hear, Mary heard, "with no honey butter." "Yeah, Laz, what is she thinking?" Laz was about 1/3 of his way through watering their perennials and had parked his 2-wheel cart next to the family stone-lined water well. Suddenly, looking rather flushed, he leaned back against the stonework of his well and rubbed at his eyes. "Why is the sun so bright today?" "My brother, it's high noon and almost summer. Soon we will be planting seeds in our food garden. What do you expect? Some life of softness, like your fluffy pillow? Maybe you want a cushy job in town, counting someone else's beans." Surprised with his lack of response in their usual brother-sister banter, Mary turned to fully look at her best friend. "Laz, are you okay?" Both feet of Lazarus had slid forward and his body slid down till he was almost sitting on dusty ground. He rubbed at his forehead with both hands. I don't know. All of a sudden, my head it hurts." Tipping to one side, Lazarus began retching, throwing up what little was in his stomach. "Martha, Martha, come here now, Martha!" Mary called for help and ran to her brother's side. He was crawling out of the dirt towards some shade and green grass. "Lazarus, what's wrong? You seemed just fine a minute ago. You eat something weird? Mushrooms? Did you fall and hit your head?" I don't know. Laz answered, slurring his words. Laz folded to his side and rolled onto his back in the grass. His world was spinning. He was telling his eyes to close. The sun was too bright, but his left eye would not respond. "Mary, what's happening to me?" Martha was beside them now, kneeling with her left hand on Lazarus' forehead and her right hand clamped around his wrist. "Lazarus, tell me, what's going on? You're not overly hot. The sun hasn't gotten to you. It's not that warm outside, and your heartbeat is steady and strong. You didn't eat some of those mushrooms that I said to leave alone, did you?" "No, Martha, and I was only teasing you about the mushrooms." "Ha, ha." Lazarus laughed with a lopsided grin. Part of his face was not responding, looking like something not connected sliding downhill. Martha spoke directly to her sister. "Mary, you run to Simon's house and get Hannah now." Eccentric Simon was 4 years older. Lazarus and his childhood friend, and Hannah, his black-skinned slave. With a frozen face of ashen color, Mary questioned Martha, "Do we need to do this?" "Mary, look at your brother." Moaning and right hand covering his eyes to block out offensive light, saliva escaped through the left corner of his mouth. Her heart ached for her brother. "Yes, Martha, I will get Hannah." The house of Simon, the estate of Simon, 1 mile south. It would take Mary 6, maybe 5 minutes to get there herself. Simon, a man who had been exiled to die in a leper colony, a man whom Jesus, the wandering prophet, had healed and restored to life. Simon was the youngest offspring and the only son of parents now passed from this earth. He was also owner of the estate his father and grandfather had acquired and built, land, vineyards, horses, oxen, employees, wines, and slaves, 2 slaves. Hannah and her half-breed daughter had been purchased 10 years ago by Simon on a business trip to Corinth, a most ungodly city and place. Even though Mary said, "I will get her," still, she hadn't moved. Fear reached down into her throat and grabbed her by the heart. Fear was trying to lay hold onto her. Seeds in the form of pictures, more thoughts and pictures, and they flashed through her mind, magnifying the condition of her brother. "Ah," Mary said, as she kicked against the fear. "No!" Mary's right hand shot out and she clamped onto her brother's beard. There was no response, not a muscle twitched, not a flouncing comment, not a screech of pain. She had clamped her hand onto a dead fish. "Lazarus, look at me!" Both eyes moved, but one eyelid raised, its left eye rolled up under its lid. "Lazarus, listen to me. You will live and not die. You hear me? You will live and not die." Mapping out in her mind the things she must do, Mary jumped to her feet. Her eyes shot down the stone-cluttered gravel road heading north, and then to her sandals beside their garden gate. She spent the next 10 seconds it took to put them on, tying them too tight. Hannah, tall, slender, black, and beautiful, she was also a best friend of her sister Martha. Mary wondered how it would have been to have known Hannah before she was a slave, taken from her home on the northeast corner of the southern continent. When she was just a teen, she was first sold in Egypt. It was there her daughter Esther was born from her first Egyptian master. It was with the daughter Esther to whom Mary had become friend. What a tangled world we humans weave. Mary's breath was coming harder now, covering the first quarter mile, running slightly uphill. Soon Stonehouse would be visible through a scattering of trees and on the far side of a valley. "Hannah, where are you? Esther, are you watching? You are always up to something. Be up to something now." It wasn't Esther who was up to something. It was Hannah, but all it was feeding Simon at the veranda table. Simon was not the average man, nor was he the average slaveholder. True, he was her master, but he had purchased both Hannah and her daughter to rescue them from what he saw their future held for them in Corinth, continually to be sold for money in a brothel. Now she served Simon in his household, but she also shared a room with her husband within the lower level of Simon's house. Esther's room was next to hers. Esther was also a different type of slave. At the moment, she was singing a song about aardvarks while she worked through her kitchen chores, and then she looked out her kitchen window. "What? Mary, is that you? Why are you running like your hair is on fire?" "Mama!" No answer. She left her mama's kitchen and found her way to Simon's favorite place to be, the sunlit veranda backdropped with the mountains and cliffs in a valley 50 feet below. "Master Simon, sir." Hannah was standing near his table, silently observing the fantastic beauty of her Stonehouse home surroundings. "Esther, will you please call me Simon?" He looked at her face. "What's wrong?" Simon, it's Mary from the house of Lazarus. She is on her way here." "Yes, and she's often at this house. The same is true of her brother and her sister. She's flat out running up the road as fast as she can go. Look." From his veranda observation post, Simon saw that this was true. Holding up her robe so as not to interfere with her running legs, she was almost flying. But Simon, having never seen so much leg before, gawked a moment and then looked away. What in the world? Dropping out of their line of sight, as she approached the house, all three left the veranda and went to meet Mary at the lower level door. Through the house, down stone steps around the corner, through an archway, and out the door they went. Mary, what's wrong? Gasping for breath. Lazarus, something's wrong. She fell against a doorpost, grabbing it with both hands. She screamed while drawing in another breath. He was fine. We were working in the garden and in the greenhouse. He was watering nard plants. And then he just collapsed. And he threw up on the ground. His face is not working right. It looks like half of it is sliding off the wall. Overwhelming concern covered Hannah as she wrapped an arm around her friend. Simon spoke with understanding. Hannah, you get your kit together and take Esther and go back with Mary. Now, you do what you can. I am going to find Benjamin. Mary looked up. Benjamin? Why? Well, he may know where Jesus is. The description of your brother, of Lazarus, his condition, there's only so much Hannah can do. The finality of Simon's statement slapped Mary in the face. Oh, no, Lazarus, Simon. Oh, Lord God, help us now. Still wrapped with Hannah's arm around her shoulder, Mary hovered at a tipping point. Hannah, with her left hand, lifted Mary's chin and spoke into her face. Mary, God is always good, and his help is always near, and he will help us now. Come with me, and we will see your brother. Simon will find the runner, your friend Benjamin. He knows things, and he may know where Jesus is. With imploring eyes, Mary looked into Simon, observing his perfect skin and hands, remembering what the leprosy had taken from him before Jesus found him and healed him and gave him new fingers and skin. Simon, when you find Benjamin, send him with this message. Lord, the friend whom you love is sick. That's all. Mary, this is very serious. He is not just sick. My brother will live and not die. Maybe something more of a hurry up and come here message. I will not give place to fear. Lazarus will live and not die. All right then. That is the message then. Lord, the friend whom you love is sick. You go now and I'll find Benjamin. From the center of the soul, at the place where words like seeds are planted in the garden of the heart, a north wind blew. A young woman guarded her black earth ground from every form of corruption. What grew in this place was her sustenance for many tomorrows, and she attacked her surroundings with a vengeance. First, she eradicated every unwanted plant from her plot, and then she headed north into the prevailing wind, cutting down or digging out any weed that could send a seed her way. So thistles, stinging nettles, chickweed, they all met the axe.